What is going on, guys? This is Jake at Mountain Yotas.
And I'm Will.
And today we're going to be talking about regearing your Tacoma. Will here at Mountain Yotas is essentially the regear king. If you bring your truck in here for a regear, it's going to be Will who is working on it. So we're going to cover everything that you need to know before you decide to regear your truck. Timestamps are down below, so definitely jump around this video accordingly. But that being said, let's dive in. All right, so starting super basic, what exactly is a regear for the Toyota Tacoma? Can you give a little bit of context there?
Yeah, so a regear for a Tacoma basically just helps if you intend on running bigger tires or heavier weight. It's going to help optimize that power you put out to the ground.
And I feel like when you look around online, you have folks who are like, you need to regear right away, you need to regear once you hit this tire size. So why specifically do Tacomas generally need a regear faster than other trucks on the market?
Tacoma's stock come with a notoriously bad final drive ratio, which just means you're going to gear hunt a lot more, especially when you start to modify the vehicle.
So essentially, when you've ever been driving on cruise on the highway and you feel that rev up and down, a regear is going to hopefully mitigate some of that, correct?
Correct.
On top of adding a couple of other perks for off-road performance and whatnot, or when you start adding gear. But I do want to talk about the next big topic, which is deciding when to regear. So if I have a Tacoma, when should I think about regearing? Should I do it when I'm running stock tires, bigger tires? Like what tire threshold would you recommend looking into a regear if somebody does want to mod their truck and add this feature?
If you're looking at any tire size over 33, I would recommend doing a regear, and or if you're going to run a 33 and have bumpers, bed cage, bed rack, or rooftop tent, any of that extra.
So essentially, as the weight increases, that's when like the need for a regear increases, kind of like in this nice like parallel fashion, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my next question for you is what if you don't regear and you keep adding weight to your truck? Like, can we talk really fast about like, okay, I don't want to drop the money for it right away, but I put weight on my truck. Like, what can folks expect if they don't regear right away? Is it detrimental for the truck's health? Can you elaborate a little bit there?
Yeah, so without regearing, you're going to experience a lot more drivetrain load, which is going to put more load on your engine as well as the transmission. You're going to put more load on the actual drive shaft itself, and you're going to notice a lot more gear hunting, like stated.
All right, so you're adding weight to your truck and you've decided that you want to regear. Can we talk about a couple of benefits that come along with regearing your truck when it comes to on-road and off-road performance? So let's start with on-road.
On-road, you're going to notice a lot more acceleration as well as fuel economy. And then off-road, you're going to have that power down low where you need it to clear those obstacles.
Gotcha. Now, when we talk on fuel economy, do you generally see better MPGs regearing, or can it be a little bit more variable and nuanced? Because I'm sure a lot goes into this when it comes to your tire size, where you're driving, the weight of your truck. Is it always that you're going to improve your MPG, or can it be a little bit more variable?
Yeah, you're going to improve your MPG as long as you stay lighter on the pedal. But a regear is going to allow you to be lighter on the pedal because you'll be in that optimized range.
Got you. And then speaking of off-road performance, you mentioned briefly that you get a little bit more power from lower gearing. Can you elaborate a little bit as to why that's important when you are off-roading, and like what kind of trails and context where that makes the most sense?
Yeah, when you're slow speed, just trying to crawl over rocks and maintain traction, you're going to notice a lot of difference with having a deeper gear ratio.
And so another benefit that I feel like we haven't touched on is increased towing capabilities, which is often what we get shit on for owning Tacomas on social media because their towing capabilities aren't that high. I think it's like, what, 7,500 pounds?
Yep.
So a regear will improve that, correct?
It'll improve it, bring it back closer to stock.
Got it, got it. So if you had a bunch of weight and you plan on towing something, a regear can be really important then, especially for the gear hunting and probably giving you more power, taking off some of that stress, right?
Oh yeah.
So on-road, a regear is going to potentially help improve your MPG. Obviously, that's multifactorial. It's going to help take off some of that stress of your drivetrain. And then off-road, it's going to help basically give you more torque at lower gearing, which can help you on gnarly obstacles. And then also as that added benefit, if you do plan on towing, especially with more weight on your truck, it can help a little bit there. Is that pretty much all of the benefits wrapped up in a nutshell?
That's pretty much it.
So we've chatted regear basics, we've chatted some benefits. Now let's talk about one of the most highly debated topics in the context of regearing, and that is 488 versus 529s. So can you elaborate a little bit on like just a top-down level as to the comparison of those two before we talk about who should look into which regear?
Yeah, so basically a 488 versus a 529. With a 488, you're going to get a noticeable torque improvement, but with a 529, it's going to be a lot larger.
Gotcha. So essentially a 488 will improve your torque, improve your gearing, but a 529 is like its big brother in some ways.
Yeah.
So in that context, and I'm sure you're probably already gathering which one is going to be best for who, but a 488, who should think about regearing their truck with a 488 more specifically?
Yeah, if you plan on going up to a 33, maybe a little bit of weight on top of that, I would suggest going with a 488. Whereas if you go a 33 with more weight, with rooftop tent and all the added accessories that go along with that, I would recommend a 529 gear ratio, and then you're pretty much locked in there with 35s as well.
Got it. And so to kind of wrap that up in like a nice summarized version, and obviously I'm referring to you as the expert here, a 488 would be great for anybody who plans to keep their truck a little lighter, maybe run 33s and probably use it a little bit more as a daily driver or commuting vehicle. And then if you plan to put a ton of gear on your truck, run 34s, 35s, or even bigger tires, a 529 is likely the best call.
Yep.
All right, so you have decided that you're going to regear your truck. You've decided that a 488 or a 529 is best for you. Going to your local shop, what can we expect when it comes to general price points of regearing your truck? And also, as the mechanic, how many hours does that take you to do?
So generally it takes about 14 hours of labor, which here runs you $2,100. And for me, it takes me about 14 hours.
Okay, so 14 hours of labor, and then I'm assuming that the price point will also fluctuate based on the brand of gears you go with, correct?
Correct.
Got it. So if I wanted to go for like a top of the line gearing for a 529, what is a general price point that you can expect to pay for like the 14 hours of labor plus like a normal gear system that's a little bit more premium on the market?
So a little bit more premium gears, you're looking at about $3,000 to $3,500, just depending on where you go.
To add a little bit more context on regearing your truck, I want to touch on a couple of questions that you commonly get asked when you are installing regears. And the first is, okay, I've regeared my truck and I'm doing a locker now. What do I do? Which brand should I go with? Can you shed a little bit of thoughts as to what you prefer regarding a locker after doing a regear?
So between lockers, if you already have a standard e-locker in the rear of your Tacoma or 4Runner and you plan on adding a front one, I always recommend to get an electric locker or an e-locker. Harrop and Eaton makes a really good electric e-locker for the front. But if you do plan on getting your first locker or a locker for the rear, I would say get a air locker, because that way you'll have an air compressor as well, which is also useful in case of airing up and down your tires.
And then another question that you brought up is that a lot of folks wonder about the strength of a 529 regear versus a 488. Can you shed a little bit more insight as to which is stronger and why?
So a 488 is going to be a little stronger than a 529 just because the actual pinion gear that engages with the ring gear is going to have a lot more tooth contact. So whereas on a 529 you may only have 1 or 2 teeth engaged at a single time, with a 488 you're going to have maybe 2.5 or 3 teeth engaged at once.
Got it. So that's super interesting and really good to know, especially if you've been thinking about, like, okay, is a 529 stronger than a 488? So thanks for sharing insights there. But I think that wraps up this Regear Basics video. Hopefully we covered most of the topics that you were wondering if you were thinking about regearing your Tacoma. If you have additional questions, hit us in the comments below or reach out to Mountain Yodas. And if you bring your truck into Mountain Yodas, likely we'll be working on your truck, so definitely ask him questions as you have them. But as always, guys, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Will, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.